The pristine white yacht glides through sapphire waters, the afternoon sun shimmering like diamonds on the waves. Soft lounge music drifts through the air as champagne glasses clink among the elite. Isabella Moore, a millionaire CEO, leans against the mahogany railing, laughing at her VIP guests. Opposite her stands a single dad in a faded cotton shirt, his hair ruffled by the sea breeze. He speaks with a terrifying calm. "I am your boss." A roar of mockery erupts across the deck. Suddenly, the boardroom doors swing open. The board of directors steps out. "We confirm it." The laughter dies instantly. His name is Samuel Wright, 47 years old, a man whose presence is as steady, as silent, and as deep as the ocean currents moving beneath the yacht's hull. To the high-profile investors and socialites sipping vintage wine on the sun-drenched deck, he is a nobody. He is the operations consultant, a man brought on board to observe, to check the safety boxes, and to stay out of the way. Samuel isn't wearing a tailored Italian suit that costs a semester's tuition, or a watch that glows with the light of 1,000 diamonds. He wears a simple white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, cotton pants that have seen better years, and loafers with worn-out heels. He stands near the stern, away from the center of attention, watching the white wake of the ship with eyes that can read the engine's rhythm just by the vibration in the floorboards. Inside his chest, Samuel carries a different kind of weight. Every time the salt spray hits his face, he remembers Sarah, his wife. This yacht, the Ocean Queen, was the last project they dreamed of together before the illness took her. He remembers her finger tracing the blueprints of the hull, her voice whispering about building something that could withstand any storm. After she passed, the glitter of the business world became blinding. He realized that billions in a bank account couldn't buy a single hour of the life he actually wanted. He retreated, not out of weakness, but out of a profound need to find what was real. In a quiet, soundproofed stateroom below deck, 9-year-old Noah is sitting with a nanny. He is coloring a picture of a massive cargo ship, oblivious to the high-stakes games being played above his head. Noah is Samuel's entire universe, his sun, his moon, and his only anchor. To Noah, his dad is just a hero who can fix a broken bicycle or explain why the moon changes shape. He doesn't know that his father's signature once controlled the maritime logistics of half the planet. He doesn't know that the very deck his father stands on is legally an extension of his own inheritance. Samuel chose this life of relative obscurity for a reason. He took low-profile advisory roles, work that didn't require a tie or a press release, because it allowed him to be a father first. He didn't want the spotlight anymore. He didn't want the 80-hour work week spent in glass towers. And he certainly didn't want the toxic arrogance that usually comes with the title of industrial titan. He missed the smell of the diesel, the salt in the air, and the honest work of moving the world's goods. He was happy to be the man no one noticed, the shadow in the corner who made sure the machines kept running, until he saw what Isabella was doing to his legacy. But nobody on this yacht truly remembers who Samuel Wright was. 10 years ago, he was the co-founder and original visionary behind the global maritime logistics group, the very empire that owned this multi-million-dollar vessel. When the tragedy struck his family, Samuel didn't sell his shares. He moved his controlling interest into a private, ironclad family trust. He vanished from the public eye, leaving the day-to-day chaos to others. Most people in the industry assumed he had retired to an island or sold out to a competitor. They forgot the most dangerous rule of the sea. Just because you can't see the captain doesn't mean the ship is empty. Isabella Moore is the face of the new regime. At 39, she is the reigning queen of the logistics world, a woman who lives for the stage, the cameras, and the endless applause of her peers. She has spent the last 3 years aggressively expanding the brand, buying up smaller companies and cutting costs with a cold, clinical precision. She focuses on the glitter of the corporate brand while neglecting the gears that actually drive the profit. She treats the company like a jewelry box, something to be polished and shown off, rather than a fleet of ships that carry the world's weight. To Isabella, today's party on the yacht is her coronation. She is celebrating the Moore acquisition, a deal that would make her the most powerful woman in shipping. She sees Samuel as a mid-level employee, a necessary manual checker hired to double-check the safety protocols and maintenance logs before the final signing ceremony. She sees a man she can talk down to, a tool she can use to show off her authority. The atmosphere on the deck is thick with ego, expensive perfume, and the arrogance of people who believe that money is a shield. Isabella believes she is standing at the very top of the world, unaware that the world belongs to the man she is currently treating like an interloper. The sun begins its slow, dramatic descent, casting long, golden shadows that stretch across the polished deck like fingers. Isabella stands at the center of a circle of billionaire investors, her voice projecting a confidence that borders on divine. She outlines her strategy for the next decade, a plan built on high-risk expansion, automated ports, and cutthroat labor efficiency. The VIPs nod in approval, their eyes fixed on the massive profit margins she promises on her digital slides. Efficiency is the only language the market speaks, Isabella says, her voice rising over the wind. By removing the human element from our primary routes, we reduce overhead by 30%. The Moore Group will be the first fully autonomous fleet in history. Samuel, who has been standing quietly near the railing for hours, finally speaks up. His voice isn't loud, but it has a resonant, metallic quality that causes the investors to pause. The clinking of glasses stops. "Ms. Moore, if I may," he begins, his tone calm and professional. "Your current route expansion plan into the northern corridors ignores the rising costs of deep-water maintenance and the fatigue of the skeleton crews you're proposing for the transition. On paper, the margins look beautiful. In reality, you are building a house of cards that will collapse under its own weight within 18 months. You're trading long-term safety for a short-term stock bump. You're forgetting that an automated ship is only as good as the technician who can fix it in a force 10 gale." Isabella stops mid-sentence, her champagne glass hovering inches from her lips. She turns to Samuel, her lip curling into a sneer of pure, elite amusement. The investors behind her exchange looks of disbelief. Who is this man in the faded shirt? "This is a celebration, Samuel, not a technical audit," Isabella says, her voice dripping with poison. "You were brought here to check the lifeboats and the fire extinguishers, not to lecture me on corporate strategy. We have computers for that. We have people with PhDs to calculate the risks. Perhaps you should stick to the maintenance logs, where the math is simple enough for you." Samuel doesn't flinch. He takes a step toward the center of the deck, the wind catching his faded shirt. "PhDs don't sail ships, Isabella, and computers don't feel the stress on a hull in a storm. You are prioritizing the show over the gears. The logistics of this merger are fundamentally flawed because you haven't accounted for the port congestion in the South Pacific or the rising insurance premiums for uncrewed vessels. If you sign this deal tonight, you're signing the death warrant for the company's liquidity." One of the investors, a billionaire oil tycoon named Marcus, lets out a sharp laugh. "Is he serious? Isabella, where did you find this guy? He sounds like a union rep from the 70s. Isabella lets out a short, dry laugh that sounds like breaking glass. She looks at her guests, inviting them into the joke at Samuel's expense. "And who are you exactly? A consultant with scuffed shoes and a child hiding in a cabin. You speak as if you have a seat at this table. You are an observer, a contractor, a man who handles the grease. You are nothing more than a ghost in the background of my success." Samuel looks her directly in the eye, his gaze so steady it feels like a physical pressure. He thinks of Sarah's dream, of the honest work he spent 20 years building. He thinks of the crews Isabella is about to sacrifice for a quarterly report. "I don't need a seat at the table, Isabella, because the table, the deck, and the very air you're breathing on this ship, they all belong to me. I am your boss. The silence that follows is absolute. It lasts for exactly one heartbeat. And then, the roar begins. Isabella erupts in a fit of laughter, her head thrown back, her diamonds catching the golden light. The guests follow suit, their collective mockery echoing off the glass and steel of the yacht. Marcus shouts, "Does the nanny know you've lost your mind?" Another billionaire clinks his glass towards Samuel. "I'll have another gin and tonic. Boss, and make it quick. The master of the universe needs a refill." Isabella crosses her arms, her eyes flashing with a cruel light. "I've seen some desperate men in my time, but claiming to own the right group? That is a level of delusion I didn't think possible in a man of your age. You should be careful. Samuel, I could have you off this boat at the next port. In fact, I think we'll do just that. We don't need maintenance men with delusions of grandeur telling us how to run a global empire." Samuel doesn't respond to the insults. He doesn't argue. He doesn't try to prove his worth with more words or desperate claims. He simply takes a step back, leaning his weight against the mahogany railing, and looks at his watch. He isn't waiting for her to stop laughing. He is waiting for the clock to hit exactly 5 p.m., the time for the automatic proxy vote to expire. "We shall continue," Isabella says, smoothing her designer dress, a predatory smile on her lips. "Ignore the help. They always did have an overactive imagination when they spend too much time around people like us. It's the salt air. It gets to their heads." The wind shifts, blowing colder now. The party continues. The music gets louder, and the mockery lingers in the air like thick smoke. Samuel remains a statue in the corner, a silent observer of a world that thinks it has already won. But the heavy, oak-paneled doors of the executive conference room behind them are starting to vibrate. The real power on this ship is about to step into the light, and the laughter is about to become a haunting memory. The double doors of the aft deck conference room swing open with a sharp, mechanical thud that cuts through the music like a thunderclap. The lounge track doesn't stop immediately, but the mood of the party shifts in a split second as a line of men and women in dark, severe, and impossibly expensive business attire walks onto the deck. These aren't the socialites or the casual investors. These are the 13 members of the board of directors of the Right Group. They look like they are walking toward a battlefield, not a party. At their head is Arthur Sterling, the chairman of the board, a man whose reputation for ruthlessness in the boardroom is legendary. He is 80 years old, with eyes like sharpened steel and a posture that demands the room's oxygen. Behind him, the general counsel carries a leather folder that contains the weight of a billion-dollar empire. Isabella immediately straightens her posture, her CEO smile snapping back into place. She ignores the laughter she was just part of and steps toward Arthur, her hand extended. "Arthur, I didn't expect the emergency session to finish so early. I was just telling our distinguished guests about the projected success of the Moore acquisition. We're ready for the signing ceremony. Everything is aligned." Arthur Sterling doesn't even look at her hand. He doesn't even look at her face. He walks right past her, his eyes fixed on the stern of the boat. He stops exactly 3 feet in front of Samuel Wright. The entire deck goes deathly, absolute silence. The laughter from the previous minute is now a haunting, embarrassing memory. The tycoon Marcus, who had joked about the gin and tonic, suddenly looks very interested in the ice in his glass. He realizes the temperature on the deck has just dropped 10 degrees. "The forensic audit is complete," Arthur says, his voice low, resonant, and deeply respectful. "We've reviewed the operational discrepancies you flagged 3 days ago. You were right, as always. The CEO's current strategy has bypassed 3 levels of internal safety compliance and omitted $400 million in projected fuel surcharges from the Moore valuation. It was a deceptive presentation." Isabella's face turns from a triumphant red to a ghostly, sickly white. Her hand is still hanging in the air, forgotten. "Arthur, what are you talking about? Samuel is just a consultant. He's here for the maintenance logs. He just claimed to be my boss. He's clearly had too much of the hospitality." He's mentally unstable. Arthur turns to her now, his eyes like cold flint. Be quiet, en masse, Isabella. You are speaking to the founder of this firm. You are speaking to the man who owns the 62% of this company held within the Wright Family Trust. You are speaking to the man who hired me 40 years ago, when I was just a hungry lawyer. And as of 4 minutes ago, you are speaking to the man who has requested your immediate removal. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd. Someone drops a crystal glass, the sound of it shattering on the deck like a gunshot. Isabella's knees buckle slightly. She has to reach for the mahogany railing to stay upright. Her breath comes in short. Ragged gasps. The board secretary, a woman with a sharp, clinical voice, steps forward and begins to read from a digital tablet. Under the bylaws of the Wright Family Trust, the controlling shareholder, Samuel Wright, has invoked his right to an emergency performance review, effective immediately. The powers of the CEO are suspended pending a full investigation into the logistical safety of the Moore acquisition. Samuel Wright is now the acting executive chairman with full veto authority over all corporate actions. Samuel Wright finally speaks. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't use it as a weapon to humiliate her, even though she had just done the same to him. He uses it as a tool of absolute, undeniable truth. Power is not a trophy, Isabella. It is a responsibility. You treated this company like a personal stage, and you treated the people who do the actual work like props for your own vanity. You laughed because you thought I was small, because my shoes were scuffed and I didn't talk about my net worth. But in this industry, the people who stay silent are usually the ones who know exactly how much noise you're making. The yacht continues to move through the sapphire water, but it feels like the ship has stopped. The guests are staring at their feet, unable to look at the man they had just mocked. They realize they have been insulting the sun while standing in its light. We shall begin the session now, Samuel says, gesturing to the large table on the aft deck. Arthur, let's look at the real data. Isabella, you may stay, not as the CEO, but as a witness to the mistakes you are about to make. We are going to fix this company, starting with the foundation, and we're going to start by remembering that our crews are human beings, not numbers on a spreadsheet. We're going back to the gears. Samuel pulls a chair out, not for himself, but for the secretary. He remains standing, his presence filling the entire deck. The sun has finally dipped below the horizon, leaving the yacht in a cool, blue twilight. The millionaire CEO is now just a woman in an expensive dress, and the single dad is revealed as the master of the sea. The silence is absolute, the right to change direction in silence, and the world will never look the same to any of them again. The meeting on the deck is unlike any corporate session the investors have ever witnessed. There are no PowerPoints, no marketing jargon, and no ego. Samuel Wright stands at the head of the table, his simple cotton shirt fluttering in the evening breeze. He doesn't look like a man obsessed with money. He looks like a man obsessed with the truth. He looks like a man who has finally come home. He begins to deconstruct Isabella's expansion plan, item by item, with a surgical precision that leaves the board stunned. He doesn't use emotions. He uses numbers. He shows them the projected failure rate of the new deep-sea fleet, the hidden costs of the insurance premiums she had negotiated away, and the devastating impact her strategy would have on the ground-level employees in the ports. You were going to fire 15% of the maintenance crew to make the quarterly report look better for the banks, Samuel says, his eyes fixed on Isabella, who is sitting at the far end of the table like a ghost. But those crews are the heartbeat of this company. They are the ones who fix the engines in the middle of the night so the cargo arrives. If they are overworked, if they are underpaid, we don't just lose money, we lose lives. We lose the respect of the ocean, and once you lose the respect of the sea, you never get it back. Isabella tries to argue, her voice high, thin, and desperate. The market demands growth. The investors want to see movement. We can't stay stagnant while the competitors are automating. The market demands sustainability, Samuel counters. his voice as heavy as iron. Movement is useless if you're heading toward a cliff at 100 knots. Automation is a tool, not a replacement for human judgment. We aren't building a show for the press. We're building a legacy for the next generation. We are going to cancel the aggressive acquisition of the Moore Group. Their debt is toxic, and their safety record is a disaster. We are going to reinvest that capital into our own safety systems, the drone detection arrays, and the employee pension fund. We are going to grow, but we are going to grow right. We will be the most reliable fleet in the world, not just the loudest. The board members nod in unison. They are looking at Samuel not just as an owner, but as a visionary they had forgotten they once admired. Arthur Sterling leans back, a look of genuine relief washing over his face. He had been worried about Isabella's direction for months, but he lacked the legal authority to stop her without a majority vote. Now, the ultimate authority had returned from the shadows. Isabella receives an official, written warning of negligence. Her title remains, for now, but her power is gone. She is a CEO in name only, a figurehead under the direct, crushing supervision of the man she had mocked. She sits in her chair, her eyes red, her arrogance replaced by a profound, stinging shame. The party is over. The VIPs are being ushered to the lower decks by the crew. The music has been cut, and the only sound is the rhythmic, steady, and comforting hum of the yacht's engines. The ship is finally being steered by someone who knows how it works. The yacht pulls into the harbor under the cover of a starlit night, the lights of the city reflecting on the calm, dark water like a dream. The board members have left in their private tenders. The investors have vanished into the shadows of the city, and the deck is finally quiet. The smell of expensive champagne has been replaced by the clean scent of the sea. Samuel Wright doesn't take the CEO's office in the city tomorrow. He doesn't move into the master suite on the ship. He chooses the role of executive chairman, a position that allows him to oversee the big picture from the shadows, while still being home every day at 3:30 p.m. to pick up Noah from school. He realized tonight that he didn't need to be invisible to be a father. He just needed to be the man in charge of his own time, and the man in charge of his values. Isabella finds him at the railing, near the exact spot where she had laughed at him only hours ago. She looks different now, smaller, more human. The diamonds are gone, and she's holding a plain jacket over her shoulders. "I'm sorry," she whispers, the words feeling heavy and strange in the salt air. "I was so focused on the noise of the crowd. I forgot what the engine sounded like. I forgot that I was responsible for people, not just numbers. I was wrong about you, and I was wrong about the company." Samuel turns to her, a tired but kind smile on his face. He looks at her as a teacher looks at a student who has just failed a test. "Everyone makes mistakes. Isabella, the difference between a leader and a manager is what you do when the mistake is revealed. You have the talent. You just lost the heart along the way. Go home. Spend some time on the water without a camera or a guest list. Think about the people in the engine room, not the people in the VIP lounge. If you can do that, maybe you'll find your way back." Suddenly, the door to the guest cabin opens. Noah runs out onto the deck, his pajama sleeves rolled up, his face lit with a huge, toothy smile. He runs straight to Samuel, hugging his legs with enough force to shake him. "Did you finish the meeting, Daddy? Can we go get that triple scoop ice cream now? You promised, and I'm really hungry." Samuel picks up the boy, lifting him onto his broad shoulders with an easy, practiced motion. "Yes, Noah, the meeting is done. The world is safe for another day. Let's go find the best ice cream in the harbor. We might even get sprinkles." Noah looks at Isabella and waves his small hand, a gesture of pure, innocent kindness. "Bye, lady. Thanks for the boat ride. It was really fast." Samuel patting his head and smiling. He walks toward the gangplank, not looking back at the yacht, the millions, or the power. He has his son, he has his dignity, and he has the peace of knowing he did the right thing for the thousands of families who depend on his name. The yacht sits in the harbor, a silent, white symbol of a massive empire. Isabella watches them walk toward the parking lot, seeing the single dad disappear into the city lights. She understands now. True power doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need to be loud, or expensive, or arrogant. It just needs to be confirmed by the truth. The ocean remains vast, deep, and indifferent to human titles. And as the night falls, the only sound is the wind and the distant, happy laughter of a boy on his father's shoulders. Samuel Wright is no longer a ghost. He is the anchor. If you believe that true power speaks in whispers, subscribe for more stories that reveal the giants hidden in the shadows. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been laughed at, only to have the truth to speak for you later? Let's discuss below.